Estás viendo Canal América, televisión dominicana para el mundo.
A Time for Truth show is sponsored by the Office of Dr. Bernard Fialkoff, a periodontal, dental implant and laser specialist in New York City, for over 40 years. Dr. Fialkoff was honored by the International College of Dentists and Pierre Fauchard, and received the Presidential Lifetime Humanitarian Honor from the White House. Call us at 718-229-3838.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your fears.
Welcome to A Time for Truth show. I'm your host, Dr. Fialkoff, and it's a pleasure to be back with you. A lot of you have been asking, how do I avail myself of the shows? Very simple. Go to YouTube, click on A Time for Truth show, hit the subscribe button. We'd love to have you as a member. There's no fee, and you avail yourself of all the segments. So now, tonight, we have a packed program, so I want to get started. And we have someone who's a real New Yorker, someone who's been here, breathes, loves New York, and has a lot that he has planned, that he's doing. That's really important. We're going to talk about the future. We're going to talk about really what we all love, youth, our kids, our families. And we're very lucky to have with us Norman Scott, the CEO and founder of Camp Inspiration, Greater New York, also known as Normski, the best electric-boogie artist in the Bronx, Harlem, and Brooklyn, and a member of the famous Rocksteady crew from 1977. Originally formed as a group of street dancers, Rocksteady became renowned for their innovative moves, footwork, performances, and were the pioneers of breakdancing, and gained popularity through their energy, electrifying performances, captivating audiences, and played the crucial role of popularizing and spreading hip-hop culture around the world. They were instrumental in elevating breakdancing from a street art form to a worldwide phenomena. And really amazing. They performed in movies Wild Style, Beat Street, had a record deal that led to the single Hey You, reaching the UK top 10. Scott continued and worked to revive breakdancing in New York, in their neighborhoods, communities, and strives to provide youth with opportunities. For over 25 years, he's been a mentor and teacher and director at New York Transfer School, Edward A. Reynolds, West Side High, helping students who have dropped out or fallen behind, rescuing them, helping them. He also partners with Oya, a wellness company, in creating spaces where young black and brown youth can learn breakdancing and new skills. And he protects kids from violence in their communities and disrupts something that I'm going to ask him during the show, a prison pipeline. Disrupts it so we can save these kids. And Buddha, if we bring him up live, I want to bid a warm welcome to Norman Scott to A Time for Truth show.
Yes. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. It's really a pleasure to be here. So, I mean, that's a lot you said. You put it all together in a lot. So I'm really happy to be here because it is about the youth, right? What is happening in New York City? This is a city that I love. This is a city I was born in. I was born in public housing, and I've seen so much, and I've seen so many traditions and a lot of changes in New York City. So one of the things that our organization is working on is making sure our kids can dance, and the cultures that was once preserved, you know, cultures that we created. We created hip hop, youth created hip hop. You know, this is a time where they must have been geniuses. You know, when you look at some of the designs that's on some of the trains or the graffiti work, or if you look at the moves that came and created pioneers, if you look at the emceeing, the rapping, they were geniuses. They were it was poetic.
It's amazing, right? But you know, before, you're a very humble guy, but I want to ask you, were you always blessed as a dancer since you were born?
Whoa, you know what? I would say, you know, I had two parents, and in front of me, Motown was there. So like, there was a soul about that. And as a young person, not for nothing, you know, like my school had an audition for like Ballet Hispanico. You know, I was accepted, but for some reason I was ostracized in my community. And I had an opportunity to get into American Ballet, you know.
Oh, you did?
Juilliard Art, yes, I as a young person. But I left. I think breakdancing came out. I was young, the culture changed, and it was really important that I sort of gravitated toward that. It was more of originality, you know. It wasn't structured, so we had an opportunity.
You had freedom, right? Freedom of expression. And
we have freedom of expression, freedom of form, you know.
But what was it like to be part of this, you know, rock steady group?
I think it was monumental, and I want to clarify certain things, because the Bronx, of course, the Bronx is like, you can never take away the pioneers of like hip hop, right? So Zulu Nation, right? There were so many chapters in Zulu Nation. The founder of that organization must have been a genius, right?
Right.
Because he basically, you know, spread hip hop through different elements. And I think that it went worldwide. Now, Rocksteady, the movie Flashdance, it was pivotal in the sense that like no one really saw breakdancing, and Rocksteady was a crew from not only the Bronx, but Manhattan. A lot of the pioneers that was into breakdancing was also from Manhattan. So like, let's talk about that. Like Crazy Legs is his own phenom, right? But Ken Swift is his own phenom, right? Because he was from our block. Frosty Freeze was from our block, you know, and unfortunately,
these are all guys you grew up from.
But tragedy has also hurt our community. You know, Frosty died young, Kippy died young. Kippy D was Electric Boogie, one of the greatest, you know. So there was a lot of differences in Manhattan, because Rocksteady Park is on 99th Street. So that's a lot of people don't really realize that Rocksteady Park was a park where everyone came to battle, right? So if you were nice in the game, like, you'll be there. Ken would be there. Ken was looking at it downstairs. So Rocksteady invited challenges, but there was also a lot of other groups growing, and they had a lot of phenomenal artists, like Dynamic Rockers, for example, and Kid Glide and his son, who I adore, and we were working together. I gotta say, Kid Breaking League, I'm gonna catch up to my brother. We're on a long journey. This young man is out there preserving the art. He has a place in Harlem where he's teaching our youth. He's teaching them the values of each element of breakdancing. It's such a valuable art, right? It's an art that we created. Black and brown children were in the streets. We were being innovative. And it's important that we preserve the integrity, because we did see something in the Olympics that did not have integrity. When you sort of mimic an art and not understand the value of it, that kind of hurt, you know?
That's right.
So I think if you're gonna showcase an art like that, it's really important to have integrity. And it's about bringing our youth into it, the ones who create it, because I think that if we bring our youth into it, we're gonna bring the game to a different level. Our children would understand its foundation. And I think with the different elements and the different things that the world has contributed to the art is important, you know?
That's what I was gonna say, that I see about you. You're a man of really high integrity. You have a tremendous heart, and you know, I've seen that every time I've been with you. And I wanted to ask you, Because here you are, you're a dancer, but you decide you're going to teach, you're going to help children, young children, teenagers, whatever. So how is it that happened? How is it that you transition? Because here you're in dancing. Next thing you know, now you decide to educate as a vocation for like what, about 25 years, right?
Yeah. So I think that happened? Well, it happened crazy because first of all, when you're like part of Rocksteady crew or you're part of your own thing where you want to be creative, when you're young, a lot of times you're influenced by so much. You're influenced by your friends. You're influenced by young gangs. There's no way you're gonna, be a part of something and not be in the mix. And so there are times where you have to say to yourself, what's more important, the streets? Or what's more important, finding a way to educate yourself, focusing on, something that's a future. And also, I was inspired by Ben. I was inspired by Nancy Vereen.
Vereen.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone has a dark, like I said, I was from public housing.
Yes.
I came from one of the largest families in public housing. So that tells you that, of course, that's going to bring you into connections that are, that are not always welcoming. And so it's really important that you stay clear of that. And I think what I see as a savior for many of our children is education. So in taking a lead, I felt like it was really important. And even at that point, I think I was probably one of the best in the city. I mean, I got to give credit to Wiggles, Fable, California. They have their own art, so I give credit to them because they have their originality. So never discredit California for that. But for me, like when I was electric boogieing, I wasn't like, if you look at me as a young clip, the wave and stuff like that. I used to love studying Egypt and so Egyptians and ballet. So I was very fortunate to be able to innovate certain dances as a kid because you're always dancing. And I think that the names that I mentioned in the art, Fable, Wiggles, those are guys that are legendary. And I've seen them on the dance floor in a major battle before at Magic, and that was at my height of my dancing.
Right.
And then I saw them again later, like when I stopped dancing completely. And, it wasn't a battle, but I was invited into a circle and things didn't go my way. I was like, I stopped dancing for years, but I decided to swim. So I became a lifeguard in the city. So I worked at Coney Island, I worked at the beach, I worked at High Bridge. So that's why that camp, my vision came to fruition because when you swim, that opened so many doors. There was a lifeguard Olympics in the city. We had the opportunity to swim in that, race in that, and so I worked under this guy named Castro for the city, who's the chief of the beach now. And so I was fortunate to save lives. So I went into lifeguarding to save lives, and I went into education to save lives.
It's interesting how you integrated, you tried all these different facets, like
yes,
to bring them all together. And then and then there's something that you started to talk to me about that I think is important for the viewers to hear. What is this thing, you see the op warfare?
Okay.
What is that?
So I think this is where things get really serious for me. Okay. So as a teacher, I've been working at Westside High School. So if anyone knows anything about education and transfer schools, that's the first transfer school. So Ed Reynolds welcomed my family in. He welcomed gangs in, so he welcomed families in, and he welcomed teens who were pregnant. He welcomed students who were kicked out of school. He welcomed really at risk, like the lowest of them all of what you thought. He welcomed homeless children. And
great man, huh?
He was a great man. And so Ed Reynolds, he was so great. Like when the school shut down, or when he passed, the school was renamed Edward A. Reynolds Westside High School. And that meant a lot to me because he hired me before he died, and he was my teacher. He was my brother's teacher.
So you have a lot of family feeling in that school.
Well, I have a lot of family feelings in that school because it's legendary.
Right.
Big L went to there. Tupac's family went there. Is like ASAP Rocky was there for a minute. You have a culture that was created there, but unfortunately, that school was moved for political reasons that did not make sense, and to me or any of the guys. So I will say on record, I will always appreciate the support of all those politicians who supported not transferring West Side High School out of Douglas, to keep it there. But we weren't for it. We didn't win the battle.
Okay.
But
so what is this op warfare? What is that?
So op warfare, let's stay there.
Yes.
That's about children who are from different marginalized communities, specifically NYCHA housing.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote about this and op violence because what's happening in Black and brown communities is that our children sometimes feel lost because there's not people there. So sometimes gangs and people like that you grow up, you see, you trust, and you moved in their direction.
Sure.
And that becomes your family. Sometimes that family is good, will take care of a young person growing up and say, yo, listen, gang stuff is not about like just running or spinning. It's about getting your education. But there's some leaders that might say, listen, you got to perform. You have to do certain things. And I think what happens is, even in my culture since growing up, it's very hard to deal with it. So it's violence between different communities. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of young people who can't go from one block to the next block. And this is
even though they're the same race, and
even though they're the same race, it doesn't matter if they're the same race. They wear different colors. So
that's how they recognize each other.
Through beads, through colors, through drill, it's a lot of ways it's a culture.
I see.
And the thing is this: if you come from a block, you're almost forced to perform in a way that
they expect you to. Huh?
You expect to, and when you don't, you're ostracized.
It's a lot of pressure on those guys.
It's a lot of pressure on youth, and I think it's a cultural tragedy. So when we look at the penal system, you have to ask yourself, who are they building prisons for? And if you think about that, it's been for us. It's been for Black and brown children. And we also, are ones to commit crimes, because what is a project? You put poor people in public housing across the city. What is going to happen when there are struggles? Sometimes things lead to things that they're not supposed to be there, because poverty breeds sometimes violence. So if a child goes in the refrigerator and there's a young man, he has pride, he wants to work, go get the job. But sometimes when you have a record, you go get a job, you're lost. So another one of my missions is, how do we take care of our men who come out here in good faith, who do their time? How are they not ostracized? So sometimes it's the older men too that come in and they're lost in the city because they're looking for jobs. But when you have a felony or you have a record, it's very hard to have a job under those circumstances. So,
interesting. So you try to protect kids. That's what you were talking about, disrupting this criminal pipeline, right? So you tell us, because you have this Camp Inspiration, right?
So the point of Camp Inspiration is this, right?
Yeah.
So if you're building prisons, right? Who are you building the prisons for? But if you build camps, holistically healthy camps, right? And camp for me stands for like children all making peace, communities all making peace, right?
Sure.
You build a camp, but the federal government and the state government is willing to invest an average of $98 million in any prison, if not more. Look at the numbers, it's outrageous.
Wow.
But they won't put any money in a camp. So I decided to invest in property with Ben Vereen and to say, hey, look, we'll donate this to nonprofits.
But you know what? You're bringing up a good point that I want to emphasize, which is a good question to ask. Why is it that we have money to invest in a prison. But don't we have the same money, or should have more, like what your point is a very well good taken point, make it so that our kids will actually have a good future. So we don't have to have the prison. We can have the schools, we can have the breakdancing, we can have you know, the swimming. So yeah, I think it's amazing what you're doing. So that's part of what your Camp Inspiration's goal is, right?
Right. So the goal is this. Let's think about this, right?
Yeah.
How many young people love soccer?
Well, a lot.
How many love? Okay. So let's talk about what we do to our immediate kids. It's important that in New York City, there is only one deep pool in Upper Harlem. I'm talking public spaces, which is Highbridge, right? And then downtown, you have a bath pool on 77th Street in Manhattan, right? As a deep pool, but you could barely. So there are a lot of children that won't go to Highbridge because there's also violence there. There's some people that won't go from Highbridge to Dyckman. So I've been dealing with this. One of my young people.
It's like invisible barriers.
It's invisible barriers. So let's talk about ABA and Dyckman basketball. So one of my students, Mr. Dominguez, created a basketball league. He tells me, well, his kids can't go to Dyckman. I'm like, why? These are beautiful people. These are Dominican people, beautiful people. They're the same culture. Spanish people, beautiful people. They have to love each other. We have to love it. We've been divided for so many years, even through colonialism, right? It's important that people see culture and that we see what's happening to children, and we look at the child, and we look at what's happening in these districts, right? Why can't a young person play basketball in Dyckman? Because if he goes there and he's not part of the right sect, it might be some
violence, huh?
And this is what I'm seeing over and over again. And there's no one that can say they're an expert. One of the things that's important about education is there are a lot of people that say they're experts, but who worked at Rikers Island and who stayed in these classes with these children to study it? I did that. I sacrificed. I wasn't looking for fame. See, if you look for fame, you won't find the problems. I was just really looking. That's why I left Rocksteady. I didn't want that. I saw something valuable in education, and that's how I'm trying to influence my son today to use his education to uplift others.
Well, that makes a lot of sense to me. And now your Camp Inspiration, you work with Each One Teach One,
right.
The Rucker Park, right?
Right.
Tell us a little bit about that, please.
Okay, so Each One Teach One is, first of all, I'd like to give Bob McCullough, George Ball, and the family the utmost respect and credit. They have been on a 55-year journey working with children against gang and gun violence. Even at their tournaments, they have been invaded. George Ball has seen guns come to the courts. Mm-hmm. So there's no lie. Will, on 115th, I'm coming to a game with my son. We've seen bullets come to those courts. There was a time things weren't, our children shouldn't be playing under those circumstances. And I think that what a camp movement does is it says, hey, look, let's bring our children away. There's some kids that never even left the city. They don't know what Lake Minnewaska is. They don't know what Wyndham is. They have never left the city. Let's show them beautiful things. And the camp is about diversity. It's just not about basketball. It's not about saying, hey, basketball. It's about tennis, golf, water polo. Life.
Well, you really,
because I lived
bring out such a good points, because you're so right that if you got this kid who could be unbelievable in the future, but you keep him in one little area, how is he ever going to know anything?
How is he? You have to really show love to our children. It's about love. It's
Expose
about
them,
peace.
right?
It's about empathy.
Right.
So part of the logo, right?
Your logo, right?
Yeah. So
tell us about that.
Tell you about the logo,
please.
Well, I'll tell you. The logo is a hummingbird, the most versatile bird in the world, and hummingbird stands for triumph. So we have colors committed to Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, diabetes. The infusion is, there's a color that has an infusion.
Okay.
That's like whatever someone is going through. And you know, gang violence and earth rehabilitation. Earth rehabilitation is major. So we're fighting for EPA grants, for Environmental Protection Agency grants, to build this, to make sure that we're building things safe, we're building things sustainable, we're building things with renewable energy. So the camp is also teaching that, and we're also trying to utilize children of Brooklyn Tech, because my son is in the school, he's an engineer, and it's about making sure children of color build, because they were once the greatest builders. They were engineers, they were Egyptians, they were Aztecs, they were Mayans,
Absolutely.
and they were some of the most brilliant engineers. And I think that what the camp is about looking at kids in NYCHA housing and saying, we got a kid who's a level 3, a level 4, and he's gifted in math. Let's bring him to a space where they can work on technology, work on making sure they're future engineers. Because I think that what is important is that, let's think about the child, a child that can look at someone poor or look at someone rich and say, like, what's up, how you doing? And there's, you know, it's a complicated thing, but it's not so complicated.
He becomes like an ambassador of life.
Ambassador of life.
You really make, I love the concept, it makes total sense, and I want to make sure, because we're reaching the end of the show, how also your camp inspiration, you're also working with Ben Vereen's, Performing Arts Center, right?
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so great. One of the things about the Ben Vereen Performing Arts Center is that, you know, Ben is, you know, he's a very important person to me, first of all, because, you know, as an artist, you know, he took me and he's my godfather. He's also deeply connected to so much, you know, Usher, and he's been his inspiration too, but I didn't have that connection. I was very, very much deeply connected him into the way where, you know, I was allowed to go to Bergen. I lived in Englewood Cliffs. I lived in Saddle River. And I think that me seeing those different worlds made me want to share them with other children.
Right.
You know?
That's beautiful. You know, that's like an altruism that's real. You don't talk it, you do it.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it. I have to do it. I can't try. It's failing. So, like, I'm on this journey, and I think it's important that if you hear what me and this brother's talking about right here, we're talking about like love. We're talking about youth. We're saying, hey, stay away from the drugs.
Right. Drug-free world.
Drug-free world, like, because it can hurt you. We're saying, look, if there's gangs out there, our camp is a movement. We will be your family. You know, we have to resurrect homes.
And let me ask you a question. For those viewers watching right now, they're probably saying, come on, what is the Gmail? How do I contact Camp Inspiration? So please, what is the Gmail?
Right now, so this is what you can follow. It's CIGNYC.
Yes.
And as we progress, we'll be showing, you know, where we are every phase, because I'm not in a rush. I'm trying to build something really beautiful, and who I partner with matter. And I'm going to be contacting certain politicians who I believe matter. So with that being said, I do believe we have good people in office now. And I'll be sending a letter, and I'm going to CC my boy in this letter. And they have to move, you know. I think it's important when we look at someone like Yusuf Salaam. This is a person who was incarcerated for no reason. And when I see his mom, she's a black queen. And I saw her fight against domestic violence. And I've seen her fight for youth. So I'm going to reach out to my brother and say, hey, look, you know what the psychological and mental damage prison is doing. Join your brother and stray away from money that is enticing. Find the heart, because let corporations find you. Because if you're doing the righteous thing, my brother, people will come. And building camps and not prisons is righteous. So there's a lot of you I want to speak to. And young Jordan, you as well.
Well, you know what? We could go on and on. Unfortunately,
we're done.
This show has come to an end. But you know what?
I love you, brother.
I thank you for coming on the show. For those of you watching, let's look at Camp Inspiration. Let's look at how they're partnering Ben Vereen, Baba Kala, Bell, all these different groups, Bobby Hunter with Artists Against Violence. Let's do what Mr. Scott is telling us to do. Let's save our kids, because that's the future. Thank you so much for being on the show.
It's a pleasure. Anytime speaking about righteous things is an honor. Thank you.
Beautiful. We'll see you on the next episode of A Time for Truth show. Inspire.
This show was sponsored by A Time for Truth Foundation Incorporated as a community service.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your feet